everyone, welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. Today we are making an adorable little pouch. Today we're going to make the Beachcomber pouch, and this comes to us from Needle and Anchor Supply Company. Now let me just show you my first attempt. It's adorable. You guys know I love a pouch. I love pouches so much because they don't require a lot of stuff. They don't require a lot of time. They're great for beginners. They're really great to learn little techniques on a smaller scale. So for example, in this version here, which is the original Beachcomber pouch, you have a gusset. A lot of you guys have been avoiding certain bag patterns because you fear the gusset. You fear the curvy-wurvy gusset. So this is where you're going to practice. You don't have to commit a lot of time, you don't have to commit a lot of material, but you get to practice these curves and the technique of gussets. So once you have this down, you move on to the bags that take hours and hours to do, and you're going to have more confidence in them. So this pouch is so cute. I love the design of this. It did take me a minute of kind of staring at the pattern to figure out how it all worked together. So I do suggest, you can watch this video and I'm going to show you where all the pieces go and how they all kind of come together to get this look. But if you're making it for the first time, definitely kind of play around with some fabrics first just to get an idea of how the layout is, and then use, the really good stuff for the next ones. So the front of this panel has this fun accent piece here. Now, this piece is also supposed to be used in the lining. I'm using vinyl, waterproof canvas, wax canvas. I'm actually not using any sort of quilt cotton. I'm not using anything that requires interfacing today. So because of that, I'm not using this vinyl for the lining. Instead, I will use waterproof canvas. We'll get to that in just a moment. But we have a vinyl front here, and you can use quilt cotton everywhere here. You don't have to use any of the material that I'm using. I'm a little lazy when it comes to interfacing, so if I can kind of get away with material that doesn't require interfacing, that's usually the route I choose to go. However, it can be thicker. So if you don't have experience sewing thicker materials on your machine, stick with the quilt cotton, okay? All right, back to the bag. So we have this fun little feature panel here, and we have these little accents. You see I do like gold, isn't that fun? And then we have the top strip. Now, this right here is a zipper panel, so that's not part of the front of the bag. So if you kind of tuck it down, you can see this is like the front panel of the bag. I know that kind of threw me off for a little bit, but this right here is the front panel of the bag. And then on the back, same thing. This is a zipper panel on top. So if we tuck that down, there we go. If we kind of tuck it down, you see this is the back panel. This is just like the back panel. And so I'm using vinyl here, and I like to use the color that matches the triangles. I'm pretty sure that's how the pattern suggests it as well. I have it's not like a wrist strap, it's like a finger strap. We'll get to that in just a minute. And then for the gusset, I'm using wax canvas. I love using wax canvas on curves because wax canvas doesn't really have a lot of stretch to it, but it's waxy, it's almost like Play-Doh. You can kind of mush it where you need it to go, and you don't have all of the ripples. You can see I use wax canvas in a lot of bags, especially bags with curves. So if you haven't tried wax canvas, I do suggest you give it a shot, especially if you're used to using quilt cotton, you're not comfortable enough yet to go with vinyl. Wax canvas is going to be your middle ground. That's where you should go. Quilt cotton, wax canvas, waterproof canvas, vinyl. That would be my suggestion. So then on the top here, we have zipper panels. So these are just how the zipper is installed. You can see the zipper is nice and long. It has one tail per the pattern. You can do tails on both sides. We open it up nice and big. And then on the inside, we just have two lining panels and a lining gusset. No pockets, no zippers, nothing like that. You can always add slip pockets, zip pockets, whatever you want on a lining. But the pattern doesn't have it in there, which makes this a quick make. It comes together very quickly. It's very simple, especially just once you get used to the curve, you can kind of bust out a lot of these pretty quickly. An optional feature on this is this little riveted tab with a D-ring and a strap. Now, because I'm using vinyl everywhere, this tab is supposed to be 1/2 inch wide. My vinyl is too thick for me to do that with tucking in all the edges and everything, so mine is 1 inch wide. So we'll go over that in the video today, kind of like how you can play around with this. We'll also make an actual wrist strap today. I didn't quite follow the rules, and I just kind of made a little. But you know what? I like it. So you can see the zipper has like a tail here. And I know some of you guys don't like that. I know my mom doesn't like that. So what you can always do is you can take that tail and you just tuck it in there. Pull the zipper out. So you kind of have to like tuck and pull. So tuck it in there. There you go. And then you can zip it up. And then you see we have a nice like clean finish on the top. No tail. Isn't that cute? So thank you as always to Needle and Acre Supply Company for allowing me to use your patterns in my tutorial. I love their design. You guys, you gotta go check out the website. This pattern, let's just talk about this pattern for a moment. When you purchase this pattern, this is the main pattern. However, at the end of the pattern, you're gonna scroll down past the templates for this one, you're gonna get even more options. So I wanna show you, I'm only gonna run through this one today, but I wanna show you another one I made. So they do provide all the instructions to make this version as well. Now, this is the one for those of you who don't want to play with the gusset. This is very similar to just like a snack pouch, just a standard snack pouch with that beautiful same design on the front. So I made this one already. This has that fun design. It has the strip on top, the little triangles, but you can see instead of a gusset, we just are gonna put the panels together, box the bottom, call it a day. Comes together very quickly. We don't have a tail on this zipper. This zipper just has a little tab, but once again, inside we just have 2 panels of the lining. I mean, if you guys would like us to go over a tutorial for this, we definitely can. However, I think if you've made like zip snack pouches before, you're gonna be fine. But we can definitely do this in another video if you would like. But today we're gonna go over this version, which I honestly love. Now maybe it's just because we've made thousands of snack pouches over here. I love this. It's not a snack pouch per the pattern, but it is a great like small cosmetics bag, but this is like a travel bag. This is where, you know, oh my gosh, I can just imagine going down on vacation to Disney or something like that, and I have a whole bunch of these lined up on my counter with all my goodies in it. I just love it. I love these pouches. So if you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shoutouts, anything at all, leave them down in the comment section. I will have timestamps for every single step of this tutorial, so just make sure you hover along the bottom of the screen and they'll all be listed there, or you can click over here and expand the description, and then all of the links for the products and the timestamps will be listed in that description box. All right, let's get started. So the pattern calls for 3 different fabrics total because you're gonna mix the exterior with the lining. However, I'm going to make the lining completely separate, so I have 4 fabrics here. So I'm using vinyl, wax canvas, and waterproof canvas. This means none of my material requires interfacing because it's all firm enough, it's not gonna stretch, I don't have to worry about that. If you're using quill cotton anywhere, you're gonna definitely wanna use some woven interfacing like SF101 or Sofuse. And depending on the piece, you're gonna need anywhere from 1/4 of a yard to 1/2 a yard. I always suggest getting 1/2 a yard of everything. That way you have some extras in case you mess something up. You can make more projects out of it. 1/2 of a yard of fabric is just a really good amount to get when you're building bags. So I've got 2 rolls of vinyl here. This is for the accent. This is for that main panel. This piece right here, this is for just like that center panel. That's really the feature panel. You don't need much at all of this. I mean, this one it really can be done with scraps. And then I also have some waterproof canvas for the gusset and the top. And then I'm using waterproof canvas for the lining. Like I said, 1/2 a yard of each is nice to have. But this can be a very, very scrappy project. So if you just want to use scraps here, you can get away with that in this bag. So here's a bunch of the hardware accessories. I will be riveting on a little strap to hold a D-ring, or in my case, a triangle ring. Totally optional, you do not need it. So I have a couple rivets for that, and then for the wristlet strap, I have a 1/2 inch swivel hook, but then for the D-ring strap, I do have a 1 inch triangle hook. I cannot fold my vinyl to make it 1/2 of an inch without it being extremely bulky. So I'm gonna show you the little change I make to make a 1 inch wide D-ring strap. Then I have my bag tag as always, and I've been using these little sew-in tags. These are so much fun. I'll have a link down below. But you add this into the lining when you close up the hole on the end, and it's a really fun, personal, kind of handmade accent that you just don't see anywhere else. And then you have your zipper. You're gonna want it to be at least 14 inches long, and then I have my zipper pull to go with it. So here's all the other stuff. As you can tell, I'm kind of a tape nut. I like to have a lot of tape. This fabric tape here, this is from Wonderground. It's great. It's very lightweight. You can sew over it. So if you just want to hold something down and be able to sew over it, this is great for that. Then I have my super duper sticky double-sided tape. This is great for working with vinyl. If you're using a domestic machine, you really don't want to sew over this tape. It's very, very gummy. And then I have some wash away Dritz tape, my 1" by 6" ruler, my marking pens of choice, air erasing, a vinyl leather marker, and then a chalk marker, a lighter for cleaning up any loose threads, my little By Any stiletto always, and then my favorite turning tool. For my bobbin thread, I have this Gutermann thread. This is just from Joann's. It's just a basic thread. The needle I'm using today is a Microtex 8012 needle. I'm using a Tex 35 weight thread today. However, a Mara 70 weight thread is also great. And then a healthy supply of clover clips. So one of the things I really like about this pattern is that they provide a lot of tester photos towards the end of the pattern. So if you're having a hard time visualizing how it's all gonna look, that will give you a lot of inspiration. So that's always the hardest part with bag making, is figuring out what's this gonna look like when my pieces come together. So here we go. We have fabric 3, which is my wax canvas. This is that little top band. This is gonna kind of look just like this. And then we have the exterior center. This is that vinyl. This is actually, I think, UV light changing. It changes color in the sun. We're gonna have to try that out. But this one here is my main panel. This is really the only place I'm using this material at all. If you're using quilt cotton, then you can also use this for the lining panels. That's what the pattern calls for. However, I don't want vinyl in my lining. I want to use waterproof canvas. So this is the only spot I have this material. And then I have my fabric 2 for the little accents here on the side, and we'll be using that again in another spot. So this is kind of what the front panel looks like. All right, now let's talk about the gusset and the back panel and lining main panels. So this is my exterior gusset, again, wax canvas, and then my lining gusset is waterproof canvas. None of this is interfaced with anything. My back panel is, again, gonna be that really fun vinyl. Look at that, isn't that fun? And then for the lining, I have 2 cuts of waterproof canvas. If you're just starting out with vinyl, I do recommend you use a thinner vinyl for this project. If you haven't worked with vinyl at all, then definitely use quilt cotton to try this out first. The thicker the material, the more difficult this is all gonna be. We do have curves here, right? We have curves and we have a little bit of bulk in some of the seams next to the zipper. So think about that. All right, next up we have the 4 recessed zipper panels. Now these are the little panels that go around the zipper and it kind of sticks up on the bag. So you can see in my first version here, this is the top band, but then this is the recessed panels. It doesn't lay flat, it sticks up, so it gives it a very cool look. Now I'm using the same material as the top band, just like I did in this bag. So it's not that noticeable of a difference from this to this. However, this is a fun place to play with that. If you really want to make this pop, use something totally different for these recessed zipper panels and it will just stand out. It would be so cool. So you're gonna have 4 of those, and then you're gonna have your wristlet strap, and then I have my connector. Like I said, this is gonna go on the side and it's gonna hold my D-ring, but I am gonna change this. I'm gonna change the finish size. I'm not changing the cut size, but I'm gonna change the finish size of it. And then we have our zipper end for our zipper. Now let me show you on this one here. I have it tucked in, but when you open this up, you can pull this out and you see this zipper overhangs and we have this zipper end here. So we can do a lot with this. You can have a lot of fun with this. This is one version. The pattern gives you multiple versions for this. You could do this a little bit differently and then put a rivet in here, which is really cool. You can also see how my zipper starts on the left here and then goes off on the right. You could center this zipper instead so that this side looks just like the right side. And you have 2 little ends here, and that helps the bag open up really wide. That's another option that the pattern gives you. I'm not going over either one of those today, but I do want to make mention of it, and I'll try to make sure I remind you at that step if you wanted to do either of those alterations. All right, so let's get started with our front panel. You're gonna need your right and left side contrasts. Hold on to your top band, we'll use that in just a minute, and then your exterior center. So this isn't very difficult to imagine. They're just gonna go just like this, right? Left, right, right over the center. Very cute. So you're just gonna take your triangles over here and you're gonna lay them right side down. And when you do that, they should line up perfectly. The notches should all come together nicely. I know if you hold it like this, it's like, this seems too big. Not when you flip it down. Grab some clips and clip these together. Remember, if any of these pieces are quilt weight cotton, meaning it can stretch, it's really drapey, it can fray, you're gonna wanna interface that with some woven interfacing. But for these projects, I really like to use a thin, kind of lightweight vinyl for most of it. And then like this centerpiece right here, this doesn't have a whole lot of seams it has to go into. So this is the spot to use the thicker vinyl if you have a print that you just really want to play with, but you're not too confident in sewing yet. So now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and we're gonna sew along both of these clipped edges, these little diagonals here, at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And now you can use an iron here if you're using quilt weight material. If you're using vinyl, finger pressing, it should be fine. You're gonna flip the seam behind the center here. So not behind these little panels, you're gonna flip it down behind the center. And what that does, which is kind of cool, is that it almost makes this look like it's a pocket, right? Because when you have that seam flip like that, it kind of looks like this is a pocket and these are the edges of the pocket, which I think is kind of a neat look. So you can press this with an iron, you can roll it, you can use tape here to stick it down. I find just holding it down at the machine is fine. So we're gonna top stitch on the exterior portion here, and that's where that seam is, at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold this in place. You're gonna do that for both sides. So once you have those little accents on there, let's grab the top band, and the top band should be the same width as everything else, and we're just gonna lay that right side down and clip in place. All right, now let's sew along this clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Once you have that sewn on, go ahead and take that top band and just flip it up like that. So the seam is gonna go behind the top band, which is definitely what you want because you have some bulk here. You don't wanna push that seam down below the bottom. So just get that nice and flat, either with an iron or finger pressing or tape, whatever it takes. And now we're gonna top stitch along this top band here, an 1/8 of an inch away from the seam. Alrighty, I love all these colors together. Aren't those pretty? Ooh, I love it. Okay, now you can decide where you want your bag tag. I've put, bag tags on the front, on the back. If I have a design here that's very specific, right, like a face or something, I don't really want to stick my bag tag right over it. So if that was the case, I would put it on the back. This design though is just so pretty that I can just kind of tuck my bag tag in about, 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 of an inch, wherever you want really, on this panel in the center. So what I'm gonna wanna do is first find the midpoint on the bottom and the top of my front panel. And to do that, I just fold it in half and pinch. I like to grab some scissors and just make a teeny tiny clip on the top there. I'm gonna do the same thing on the bottom. When you're doing the bottom, just make sure you're lining up your accent panels, and that will help you find the center perfectly. You're gonna need this for the gusset, so might as well just do it now. So now this is when I use that super sticky double-sided tape because it will make sure my tag does not move. However, I have a history of installing my bag tags a little crooked. It's just my signature thing, so it is what it is. So I'm gonna grab a ruler and just measure about 1/4 of an inch down from my midpoint mark. So now I'm just gonna top stitch around all 4 edges of my bag tag at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I do leave the tail, so I don't back stitch when I start and stop stitching. I leave the thread, the bobbin thread and the top thread nice and long at the beginning and the end, and then I'm gonna pull all the tails to the back and tie it off. And that just gives a really professional look to it. So I have these nice long tails on the front and also 2 nice long tails on the back. I'm just gonna pull on these back bobbin threads until I see a little loop with the front thread kind of poking up. And then I use my stiletto to get in there and just pull it to the back. So you're gonna do this for all your threads. So now I have 4 threads here on the back and no threads on the front, and you can't even really tell where I started and stopped my stitching because it just looks continuous. There's no back stitching. So it's a few, seconds of extra work, but I think it pays off. I think it makes it look custom and not handmade. You know what I mean? So then I'm just double knot it, triple knot it. And since this is gonna be in between panels, it's never gonna be seen. We don't have to worry about cleaning up these threads or anything. All right, so now our front panel is all ready to go. Let's grab our gusset. So let's prepare our gusset. So take your gusset, this is the exterior gusset, and fold it together so you're matching up those teeny tiny short edges. We're just trying to find the midpoint right now. So I just match them up and then pinch and clip. You can always use the templates to help you find the midpoints as well, but sometimes your cutting might be a little off. So this is just like a tiny bit more accurate if you fold it and pinch and snip or mark. Okay, so I've got the midpoint on the top and bottom of my front panel, the midpoint marked on both of the long edges of my gusset. So I'm just gonna take my exterior front and my gusset and I'm gonna lay them right sides together, lining up the midpoints on the bottom edge first. So just like that. So line up those midpoints and then use a clip to hold it in place. I find I have to use a couple clips because it does have a tendency to shift with just one clip. All right, so once you have that done, take the left top corner and we're gonna pull that up to meet the left top corner of our exterior. And you don't have to try to get the top flat edge here to flatten up with the top edge of your front. You don't need to do that. Just focus on getting the left edge matched up and the corner matched up. So for me, that means this little edge here on the top, you see, it just kind of angles off ever so slightly. That's what we want. It doesn't have to be a perfect right angle here. So clip up there and then clip a little bit along the straight edge over here. There we go. Don't worry about the curve just yet. Let's do the same thing on the right side. I'm just gonna match up that corner, match up the right edge. And wax canvas is actually a great material for this because it's a little gummy. Like it feels gummy, but then your hands don't feel sticky or anything. But it's almost like it's more malleable. You can really mush it the way you want. So now I have this setup here. I'm gonna flip this over and work on the back like this. So for these curves here, I'm just gonna kind of tuck in like a bowl. So my gusset stays like a wall and then my exterior front panel tucks in like a bowl. And I find that is the easiest way to address curves because you don't have to mess with the gusset too much. If you find that the gusset is just so tight and you're getting a lot of ripples right here on your exterior front panel, then you're gonna take your scissors and you're just gonna make little tiny 1/8 of an inch, like tiny itty bitty cuts straight into the side of your gusset. And that will allow the gusset to kind of spread out more so that this doesn't have to bunch up, right? Because when you have a curve, your material just isn't lining up perfectly. So either this material here has to fold over itself to accommodate the curve on the gusset, or the gusset needs to spread out more to accommodate this curve on the exterior. Well, that's what we prefer. We want the gusset to spread more. We don't want anything bunching up, you know, and pleating. It's not the look we're going for. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side, just kind of tucking it in, moving it around, and I'm telling you, this wax canvas is great. If you haven't worked with vinyl, but you want to work with something other than just quilt cotton, I do suggest wax canvas. I think that's a good stepping point between quilt cotton and vinyl. Okay, so now we can take this to the sewing machine and we're gonna sew along this edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Everybody has different methods for doing this. My suggestion, gusset has to be up, so I'm gonna lay it just like this. I find that's easiest if the gusset is up. Use a stiletto to help you get around these corners. That means sometimes I kind of poke my stiletto into the material and pull it a little bit. If this gusset here is just like a 1/4 inch away from the edge of the vinyl, you know, like it's just moving in and you can't do anything about it, that's when you get the scissors, you make a little snip and bring the gusset back out. Biggest tip is you gotta go slow. So we're gonna go around the entire edge here at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, how did you do? If you feel like you have some pleats that you need to address, you can always unpick your thread just in that spot. You don't have to unpick the whole thing. Just unpick the thread in the spot that's giving you trouble, mush it around, get it straightened out, and then just re-sew right over that area. Just make sure you kind of overdo the stitching. You know, you go over the previous stitches and then you back stitch really well and you'll be fine. But these curves are not terrible. They're not that bad. So now we're gonna grab the exterior back panel. If you haven't already, you're gonna wanna mark your midpoints on the top and the bottom. All right, so we're gonna do the same thing. So now we're just going to take our gusset. Let's hold it like this. So your exterior front is right side up, your gusset is just like this. Now take your back panel and you're gonna lay it right side down and match up the midpoint mark on the bottom of the back panel with the midpoint mark on the gusset. Clip there and then do a clip on either side of it as well. Have you guys seen these clips? I don't know if you can tell in the camera. But these little clips here, they're glittery. They're purple and clear and glittery. These are from Lauren Warmino, and I got it in one of her boxes. I'm really, really hoping she sells these individually because I need 1,000 more. So once you have the bottom midpoint marks done, then go up to the top corners. And this should be not easy, but a little bit easier than the first one just because it's already shaped for you. So do both corners. And just like we did on the front, I'm going to kind of tuck this in. Now, how easy it is to tuck it around the corners depends on your material. For example, this material is a little bit stiffer. Even though it's thin, it's a little stiffer. So it doesn't want to stretch as much, which is fine. I just have to unclip, massage everything around, reclip. So just like we did on the front, we're going to sew this on at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once again, I will be sewing it with the gusset wrong side up, which means this is going to get smushed, okay? Don't worry about trying to keep this really perfect while you sew it. That's not how it works with bags. We smush the bags, okay? So just smush it down, get it out of the way. This area right here, this needs to be perfect. We don't care about this, we can fix that later. So all the way around a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end on both of the tops for the gusset. Alrighty, here is our bag. Now, you might want to just check it real quick and make sure there's nothing you need to fix, because once we start cutting things, it's going to be harder to fix it. So just check around, make sure everything looks good. Everything over here looks pretty good. So what we want to do now is we just want to kind of trim around the corners. Now, we only have a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so we really don't want to shave it down, because especially if you have bigger material, thicker material, once it's pulling on those stitches, it could kind of unravel and be a problem. So if you do have really thick material here, you actually might want to go around this entire edge on both sides, just to the right of your stitches. So just closer to the raw edges of your stitches, just to make sure, the material doesn't rip the thread, the material doesn't kind of come undone. You don't want too much pressure on really thick material. My material though is not that thick. So what I'm going to do is I'm making little tiny, like just less than 1/8 of an inch cuts right into these corners. If you have pinking shears, that's also a great tool to use. All right, because we're gonna have to turn this right side out anyways. Let's just do it now. We did all that work. Oh yeah, these colors look so good together. Look at this. Isn't that so cute? Oh, I love this little pouch so much. I could make a million. I could. Look at that. Isn't that adorable? And you know one thing I really love about this top band, because you could still do this at this step if you wanted to. If you had like a Cricut or a silhouette and you wanted to like cut out someone's name and put their name on this, right? How cute would that be? This would be a great bridesmaid's gift, wouldn't it? Because then you could put all of the bridesmaids' names on here. They could keep all their stuff in it for when they go out. Oh, I love that. Okay. Gotta set this to the side now. All right, so now we're just gonna do the exact same thing with the lining. We don't have any lining pockets here. You are more than welcome to do that if you'd like. All right, so I'm just cutting the midpoint marks on the gussets, and also I'm gonna cut the midpoint marks on the lining, top and bottom. And this is what I like about doing gussets and stuff on linings. You can be pretty messy. You can get some pleats, you can get some ripples. It doesn't matter. So, all right, so let's take one of our lining panels and lay it right side up, and then take your gusset and lay that right side down. Once again, we're gonna match up the bottom edges. So get those midpoints together and clip together. And then again, clip the top corners. And then go ahead and flip it over and create your little bowl and clip around the gusset. Okay, so once again, we're gonna take this to the sewing machine. We're gonna sew it with the gusset wrong side up, just like we did previously. However, when we start over here, we're gonna start at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch. And then we're gonna go down. After we get 1 inch to 2 inches down, just right around here, we're gonna increase that seam allowance to a 3/8 inch seam allowance as we go around the curve and the bottom and the other curve. Once we start getting about halfway up the side, for the other side, we're gonna decrease it back down to a 1/4 of an inch. So what we're doing is we're making the seam allowance the exact same size on the top so that we can fit it together with the exterior. You don't wanna increase your seam allowance up here, or else you're not gonna be able to sew it properly to the exterior. So at the tops, it needs to be a 1/4 of an inch. But to prevent it from being really baggy on the inside, we're gonna increase the seam allowance, making the inside just a little bit smaller than the outside, so that way you don't have, you know, the bagginess inside. If you don't mind the bagginess, then just keep it all at 1/4 of an inch. But it is a technique to practice since this is a pretty, you know, quicker pattern. So let's go and sew this at the machine. Alrighty, and I have some pleats on here. I got little pleats. Look, when you open it up, even now, because I have dark material, but even now, when it's not tucked into a bag, you can't see them, it's fine. Okay, so take your sewn panel, your gusset, and lay it like this so the gusset's wrong side up. Grab your other remaining lining panel and lay it right side down so that we're doing right sides to right sides. Gusset to remaining lining panel, line up those midpoint marks first, and then clip around them. Okay, before we sew this, on the gusset side, you want to mark between a 4 to 6 inch opening depending on your material. If you have really thick material, you're gonna want a 6-inch opening. If you have really lightweight material that's bunched up really well, you can use a smaller opening. I'm gonna mark about a 5-inch opening. So right along the bottom straight edge of your lining, and I do it on the gusset because I sew with the gusset wrong side up, so that's what I will see. I mean, it doesn't have to be precise. This is just the opening we're leaving to turn the bag out in the end. So now, just like before, we're going to sew with the gusset side up, like that. And we're gonna start at the top, 1/4 inch seam allowance, make sure you backstitch, increase to a 3/8 inch seam allowance until you get to your first mark. Then you're gonna stop and backstitch really well there. Skip over your opening, start at the next mark, backstitch really well, 3/8 inch seam allowance over here, go around the corner, and then as you come up the side, go down to a 1/4 inch seam allowance, backstitch at the top. You got it. Okay, just like before, you can trim down the corners. I actually like to shave these down just a little bit. So I'm going to trim the seam allowance in half right around the corners, but not in my opening. So where I have this opening here, I'm gonna leave that at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, but then around the corners, just trim those down. I find just trimming down the seam allowance here is enough to help those curves kind of expand the way they need to. I don't feel like I need to cut little slits into the corners in the lining. Just don't get too close to the stitches. Oh dear. All right, you can put this to the side for just a moment. So now we're gonna prepare our zipper end. Now if you're using fabric here, you can use an iron to do all this. I'll be using some tape to help hold everything in place. All right, so I measured 1 inch down from the short edges on both short edge sides, and I'm just gonna grab a piece of tape, and I'm going to tape right above the line, so closer to the raw edge than the center. And this is just to help hold the vinyl in place. Like I said, if you have fabric here, which is preferable for the zipper, then you can use an iron and that will do the same thing. So I'm just gonna remove the paper from one of my tapes and fold this short edge down, wrong sides together to meet that marked line, and that's creating a 1/2 inch fold over. Do this for both short edges. So then I just marked a little line to find the midpoint going vertically now. And we're going to fold the longer raw edges in to meet that line. Just like this. And for this, I use clips because I do want to be able to kind of unfold this and move it around. So I'm going to use clips to hold this in place. Again, if you're using cool cotton, just use an iron. It's going to be a lot easier than this. And then you're gonna fold the whole unit in half so that the short edges come together, everything is wrong sides together. Depending on your material, this can be easy or difficult. Fabric here, it's gonna be very easy. Vinyl can be a little trickier. So if you're not used to working with vinyl, definitely be careful on the step. I would not suggest a thick vinyl for this. I'm using a fairly thin vinyl here. All right, so what you end up with is a little like 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch square. Let's leave that to the side. Now you're gonna grab your zipper tape. We wanna trim our zipper tape down to 14 inches. And I'm gonna go ahead and add my zipper pull. So you can see when I add my zipper pull, I have the end here that will be closed when I close the zipper pull, and an end that will be open when I open it, right? This tab is gonna go over the closed end, so we have to prep the open end. And what you'll wanna do, there's a couple different ways to do this. I'm gonna show you my trick here. So I'm gonna actually measure 1/2 inch down from the raw edge of the open end, right? And this is actually best if that's still closed. If it's not, that's okay. And then I'm gonna take my air erasing marker, and I'm going to just mark right in the seam, so right on the very edges of my zipper tape. There we go. So I have these little marks here. And then you open it up. Now this is a trick I just learned on Instagram recently. It's very cool. If you're not comfortable working with fire and things like this, then don't do it. What you want to do though is you want to pinch along that mark. So you're just going to pinch it from the right side so that the zipper tape goes wrong sides together, and the zipper coils are naturally going to fold up out and out. So for me, it's going to be up to the right. So when I do that, I have everything lined up here. Now you can take this to the sewing machine and you can sew right along this edge to hold it in place, or you can clip it like that carefully, grab a lighter, and this is if you're using like nylon zipper tape, and then burn the edge. And while it's not too hot, you can kind of pinch it like this. And what you're doing is you're melting the edges together to hold it together. It's pretty wild. Let's see if I can find the original Instagram video so I can give proper credit. So there we go. And it doesn't have to hold it forever. We just need it to hold it until we can sew it, right? So I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. I'm gonna pinch wrong sides together and fold back. And then I find using a clip just helps hold it so I don't burn my fingers. You could also use tweezers here, something like that. You just don't want to, you don't want to burn your fingers here. So I just get it nice and hot and melty. There we go. And I will say some zipper tape is easier to do this with than others. You don't want to be too aggressive with this right now. This can still come undone. We just want to leave it until we can sew it. So that's one alternate way of doing this. Like I said, if you're not quite ready for that, just sew along these edges, or make a second one of these and we can add it onto both ends instead of this. All right, so let's go ahead and add on this zipper end to the closed section. So our zipper is fully prepared. So you can see it just kind of opens up like this, and you can just tuck your zipper tape right in there and then refold around it. Now, again, there are other options to do this. There are other ways to make this end so you don't have, these folds showing or anything like that. What I actually like to do is just kind of tuck in my zipper tape into this. So you can see how I have these two folds here. I'll just tuck it inside of there so that way I don't have to worry about the zipper tape peeking out over here on the sides at all. Lots of different ways to do this. Like the pattern gives you another template and another option if you want to check that out so that you can have more of a cleaned up zipper end here with a cute little rivet on it. Whatever works for you. So now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch along all 4 edges of the zipper end at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Be careful here if you're using vinyl. This gets very thick. I'm going to go very slow. And if you need to, go ahead and change your needle to a stronger needle, like a jeans needle or something. I think I should be okay with my 80-12. We'll see. Okay, now so grab your 4 recessed zipper panels and you're going to measure 1 inch in from each short edge and mark a line. Since I'm using wax canvas, I can actually just kind of scrape over it with my stiletto and that marks it perfectly. So now grab your zipper, and I'm going to close the zipper most of the way, and I'm going to take one of my recessed panels and I'm going to lay it right side down against the right side of my zipper. And my little 1 inch mark here, I'm going to have it just go over the coils. So I don't want these little coils over here sticking out in the end. So I'm going to have it go just past the coils, and then I'm going to clip it together, right sides together. And then I'm going to clip along the whole edge of my zipper. And make sure you know where your other mark is on your 1-inch mark over here. So now grab another recessed zipper panel and we're gonna lay that right side down to the back of our zipper tape and just line it up perfectly with the other zipper panel. There we go. So you just have like a little zipper sandwich right now between your two pieces of fabric. Okay, so now with the zipper tape right side up, if you can pull up your panel, you can see it. We're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew along this right side clipped edge here. So we're going on the right side of the zipper coils. We're going to start at that 1-inch mark line and we're going to backstitch and we're going to go down at a 1/4 inch seam allowance until we get to the other 1-inch line and then we're going to backstitch there and stop. Make sure you're using a zipper foot for this. So now once you have it sewn on, you want to push both of these panels out of the way, but we're not going to finish them just yet. We're going to attach the other side too, but we don't want to accidentally sew over these panels. So both of those two zipper recess panels are pushed out of the way, and I'm going to take another recess zipper panel and I'm going to lay it right side down on the right side of my zipper tape. And once again, I'm making sure it goes past the coils, but I'm also making sure it lines up with the panels that I've already attached because we want this to be even. So there we go. I'm just going to line it up like that. Clip this down, right sides together with the zipper tape. And if you have a hard time attaching all three of these things together at once, the two panels and the zipper, then what you could do is you can attach just this first panel, but attach it at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then clip on the back panel. And when you sew that to these two pieces, sew it at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So it's basting it down first. All right, so once you have one side clipped, flip it over. I know it's a little messy. Just make sure you push away the already sewn edges and then take your other panel and lay it right side down to the back of your zipper and just make sure it matches up with all of the edges. All right, so just like we did on the other side, we're gonna sew along this clipped edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, starting and stopping at those 1-inch marks, and make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so once these are all sewn together, you're gonna fold back the short edges on that 1-inch line. So you're gonna fold it back 1 inch. So I just do one end and then I'll do the other end as well. So if the other end isn't an exact inch, it's more important that it's lined up with the other panel for that zipper tape. So once you have them folded back, then you're gonna fold them up wrong sides together. It can get a little messy, but if you have some of this, raw edge overhang over here on the raw edge side, don't worry about that. That's gonna get sewn into a seam. So pay more attention to how it looks next to the zipper coils, and then this little folded edge right here, the short folded edge. Clip those together. And we're gonna do the same thing on the other side here. You're gonna fold the short edges wrong sides together right at that 1-inch mark. So we're folding it in 1 inch, and then just making sure that they're folded in at the same spot. So when we flip these panels wrong sides together, they match up. All right, so there's that. Now you just want to make sure you press the zipper panels away from the zipper teeth and keep it straight. And then go to the back and make sure the back matches up with the raw edges. There we go. Get it all lined up. If you're using quilt cotton here, you can iron this and that will help hold it all in place. Wax canvas is nice because it's kind of gummy, so you can just kind of push it and it'll stay, but I'm also going to use clips to help hold it in place. So you see how that's going to look? It has a nice finished edge on the short edges, and then these raw seams here, that's just going to get sewn into a seam elsewhere. Another option, if you don't want to fold over the short edges over here that go off the edge of the zipper, is to sew right along that 1-inch line with the two zipper recess panels right sides together, and then you would just pull the zipper out. It's a little bunched up, it's a little bulky, but it is another option. I tried both, and I think I like this one better, where we just fold it back 1 inch and then fold them wrong sides together. I think it looks a little bit cleaner and it's a little bit easier to sew. So I'm just going to do the same thing for my other recessed panels. All right, so if I zip it up, this is what it looks like. Just make sure, you can see that I have some overhang here. That's fine. Again, this is all going to be eaten up. I just want to make sure these top edge here, bottom edge here, right along the zipper. All right, so now we're going to top stitch around all 4 edges of each of these zipper panels at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure you're using a zipper foot so you can get nice and close to your zipper teeth here. And you're gonna also top stitch along the raw edges to hold them in place. Alright, there you go. Doesn't that look nice? I love how these little zipper panels end up looking. So now we want to find the midpoint on these panels. So I'm just going to fold them together just to find the midpoint on the long side. And I am going to mark that with a marking tool. So just right on the edge. Do this for both sides of your zipper. Now you're going to grab your lining. And you're going to take your zipper panel and you're going to have your zipper panel right side up and you're going to align it on top of the right side of your lining. So my lining is wrong side out right now and I'm looking at the inside of it, so that's the right side of it. And I'm just going to lay my zipper panel inside and line it up like that, which is how we want it in the end, right? In the end, we want this over our lining like this, so when you open it up, you see the right side of the lining. So start at those midpoint marks and then mark out towards the edge. So you're gonna have to really push the lining out of the way because it is a snug fit. Just push it in there. You might find it easier to open up your zipper, so you're just dealing with this one panel here. And it really just depends on the material you're using as well. If you have a lightweight material for these zipper panels, this is gonna be a little bit easier to do. But keep the other edge of the lining out of the way. Okay, so now we're just gonna sew this down at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance at about like a 4mm stitch length. You just wanna base this in place. Looks like I forgot to record that side, so I'll make sure I show you on the other side. So we're gonna do the same thing after that side is basted on. Just make sure your zipper is straight before you baste it together. And once again, zipper panel right side up. We're gonna press it onto the right side of the lining, match up those midpoint marks first, and then clip out to the side and just open your zipper and push the other side out of the way. I know this gets a little bit tricky if the material you're using is pretty stiff. All right, now let's go baste this other edge of the zipper panel onto the lining at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, once those are sewn on, remember to kind of lift up the zipper panels because that's how they'll be in the end. And you can just test it out. Looking cute. All right, so now all we have to do is attach the exterior and the lining together. So I'm gonna unzip the zipper and tuck in the end of the zipper into the lining, just like that. And then we're gonna fold down the zipper panels so that we just have the lining that looks like this. If we kind of close it up, you can't even see that there's a zipper there. Now you're going to keep your lining wrong side out, zippers completely tucked in and open. And then grab your exterior, and I'm going to have it so that when the zipper closes, it goes towards the left. So right now my zipper is open and it's all the way on the right. I'm going to take my exterior and I'm going to put it into the lining, and you're going to have to shove it in there because the lining is smaller than the exterior. And then you're going to first line up the seams for the gussets. So just go to the sides and line those up. And then you can find your midpoint marks on the top of your lining and exterior panels and pin those together. You're going to really have to kind of smush that exterior in there. And then once you have these 4 sections pinned, you can just kind of straighten out the material in between each section and clip together to get it to all line up nicely. So now we're going to sew along this top edge at 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you have really thick material, you might want to go over a second time. Just go just outside, closer to the raw edge of those original stitches, and that will help prevent the material from pulling on the stitches too much. Alright, once you have that top sewn, you can pull everything through the hole in the lining. So go ahead and push out the corners of your exterior. Looking cute. And then I'm going to tuck in the lining and really flatten out this seam between the zipper panels and the exterior. So right here, we want to top stitch that seam. So if you need to, you can leave the lining open, and that way you can put your hand in there to kind of roll things down. Now I'm a little concerned because I did have a needle bend on these seams over here by the gussets, so I'm going to have to be careful going over that. I upped my needle to a 90-14 to help. Oh yeah, but that's just like hard as a rock. It's going to be hard to sew over that. So if you have some of these really bulky areas like I do, what you're going to want to do is you might want to hand crank your needle over. So that's pretty much just leaving the material on and then like cranking the little circle on the side of your machine to get the needle through that section, because you don't want to break a needle. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the table off of my sewing machine. So that way I pretty much just have the arm, the little sewing machine arm, and I'm going to wrap this around the arm and top stitch right here on this top part of the exterior below the recessed zipper tabs all the way around at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, just to keep this nice and clean. Alright, there we go. It was pretty easy to top stitch this except for one spot, which is always interesting to me because it has to do with the material and how the material folds in on itself. I had one spot where the material was just folded, I guess just too many times or something, and it was pretty much a rock. It was not going to be sewn through. So we've got that done. So now let's close up the lining, and this is where we're going to use that fun little tag. So you're going to just put your fingers into the fold of the lining and kind of tug on it and fold down the raw edges in on one another. It doesn't have to be a perfect 3/8 inch seam allowance. You just want those raw edges tucked in enough so that when we sew here, we don't have to worry about those peeking out at any point. So I'm going to clip along the whole opening first. There we go. And then, this is what I've seen Monica over at Castine Handcrafted do, and it's so cute! You put this in there. I'm sure a lot of you guys are doing this already. I'm always late to the game on these things. But you put it in there so that it's sticking out so you can still see the words. For example, mine says, "You look really pretty today." Ah! Isn't it, I mean, who wouldn't, like if you had this bag, and especially if you had this bag for a while, like you gifted it, you bought it, whatever. But you've owned this bag for a while, and just one day you're cleaning it out and you see that in there, like how happy would that make you? Because I have a bag that I actually purchased from Monica that she made, and it has a little tag in there, and it made me really, really happy to see that. Alright, so now we're just going to top stitch along this opening, the clipped edge right here at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and you'll also be sewing in this tag in place, and then you are done with construction of the bag. Alrighty, isn't that cute? I love that. So just tuck it in all the way. Oh my gosh, this is so cute. So you do not need to add anything else to this. Look at it. Look at that. Perfect, right? Like I said, if you have a party, if you have a wedding, you have a baby shower, you just want something pretty, anything at all. Isn't this just beautiful? I love this so much. And this is pretty skinny, but you could definitely, if you had an embroidery machine, you could embroider this out ahead of time and have an embroidered name on here. There's a lot you can do with this. It's just so stinking pretty. I love it so much. Okay, so I'm going to show you how, let me see how big this is. I'm going to show you how to add the little D-ring strap here and the wristlet, and then we'll be done. So you're going to grab your wristlet strap and your strap connector, and on the short side of your strap connector, you're going to measure down 1 inch and then fold down the short edges wrong sides together so you have a 1/2 of an inch fold over. I'm using double-sided tape to help with that. And then you're going to fold the long edges in wrong sides together to the middle of your connector. There we go. So do this for both long edges. There we go. And if you're using quill cotton, you can fold this whole thing in half long ways again, like a hot dog bun, and you'll have a nice 1/2 inch wide strap. Since my material is just a little too thick to do that, I'm gonna leave it as a 1 inch wide strap, and I have just enough room here, I mean just enough room to rivet it on this opening between the zipper ends. So I'm gonna leave it as 1 inch, and I'm gonna go top stitcher on all 4 edges here at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so to attach this strap tab, whether it's a 1/2 of an inch or an inch, you're going to first insert your D-ring or triangle ring. There we go. And then the back side, the ugly side of the material should be around the bottom straight bar. And then you can just wrap it around this edge over here where the zipper opens. Now, one thing I want to check is to make sure the zipper can close. So when we close the zipper, yeah, it can still close even though we have that D-ring there. So you just want to make sure it's not so wide that you can't close the zipper. So what I'm going to do first is actually punch the holes out of this part, and then I'll figure out where to punch the holes out of here. It's kind of tricky to keep everything together and then punch the holes out all at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my strap connector with the D-ring on it and lay it down and figure out exactly where I want my holes to be. I have about 1 inch to play with, so I'm going to line it up so that I'm centered, and then I'll just mark them about 3/8 of an inch apart. So there are templates you can use to help you get these really perfect. I just eyeball it. So now this is my rivet press that has the hole punch die on it. You don't need separate rivet presses for this. I just have an extra one, so I keep the hole punch die on it. And I'm going to punch through both sides of this connector at those marked spots. And once you have those holes punched, you can take your pouch, and on the side with the zipper open, we already went over that, just going to wrap it around. And my goal here is to make sure it is centered and that this top hole here doesn't punch through the top stitching or go off the edge of my pouch. So it needs to be pretty snug on there. Yeah, again, get it as straight as you can, and then grab your marking tool and just draw right in those holes you already punched. And now I'm just gonna make sure this is nice and flat in here, and then I'm gonna punch those holes. All right, so holes are punched and everything. Now we need to see if we can get it to all come together. So I'm gonna grab a rivet, and I'm gonna push it through one side of my connector, and then I'm gonna push it through that top hole of my bag, and then through the top hole of my connector. And it can be pretty bulky, so grab your cap for your rivet and just snap it in place. And that will hold it together. Do the same thing through the top part, through the bag, through the back part. Yeah, that is pretty bulky. I'm using medium-sized rivets for this. If you wanted to get the longer rivets, the large size, I believe, that would be good too. So now I'm gonna grab my press that already has the rivet die installed, and I'm just gonna press down these rivets. All right, so now our D-ring or triangle ring, whatever you're using, is installed. Let's close it up. Yeah, it looks great. So now let's make the wristlet strap. So you're gonna wanna mark a midpoint mark along the entire long edge of your strap, and then measure in about 1.5 inches from the short edges. All right, now we're going to fold the long edges, wrong sides together, to meet that middle line and clip in place. So do this for both of the long edges. And then you're going to want to fold the whole thing in half again, so you have a 1/2 inch strip. Now, you know what? I think my vinyl actually is a little stiff for a wristlet strap like this. But let's just see what happens. Once you've got this 1/2 inch wide, undo some clips and thread on your 1/2 inch swivel hook. And on my first bag, I didn't do this. I just left it at 1 inch wide, and I used a 1 inch swivel hook. So don't, you can change this up however you need to. So I'm gonna get this more towards the center. All right, so wristlet straps. What we wanna do now is we wanna combine the short edges. So unclip the short edges, pull everything out, and then you're gonna wanna fold this so that they're right sides together, and open up those edges completely. And so that's why you might have to unclip quite a bit in order to do that, depending on your material. And then clip along the short edges so that they're completely open and unfolded and right sides together. Now I'm going to sew along this edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, once you have those sewn together, you're going to press that seam open like that, and then refold everything wrong sides together, and then refold it again so it's a 1/2 inch. So I'm finding with this vinyl, this seam right here where they come together, that's very bulky. My machine is not gonna be happy with that. It's already kind of mad at me today. All right, so now what you want to do is you want to go around both of these folded edges and just top stitch at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. So you might want to wrap it around the arm of your sewing machine and just go all the way around. Just make sure you move the swivel hook out of the way as you do it. All right, my camera died in my sewing machine. It needs some help right now, but we got the wristlet strap done. And what you can do with the wristlet strap is you can pull your swivel hook all the way down to the seam here where it's really stiff and bulky. Just kind of fold that seam to one side. And then, if you have a rivet press, you can pop a hole just underneath the seam. So you don't want to, cut through your stitching, but just underneath the seam, centered, get that in there, and then grab yourself a rivet. And this just makes the wristlet strap stay in place and it looks cute. You could also sew this if you'd like, but I literally can't. My sewing machine is so mad at me. All right, so then you have just like this cute little rivet on there. You can set that real quick. Pop it onto your bag. Oh, look how cute that is. Isn't that adorable? All right, this might be one of the prettiest things I have ever made. Look at these colors. Oh, that vinyl, right? With the shiny vinyl and the florals. It's so pretty. And then that wax canvas. A lot of times when we think of wax canvas, we think of like really natural, like, like an army color or just like more of like a rustic, gender neutral cover. But you can get fun, like hot pink, light pink, wax canvas. So I love that. And then here's the back. Look how fun that is. Ooh, I love this vinyl. It's got a fun texture to it. I like that. I like this vinyl a lot because it's not super thick. This is, again, a pattern where I would suggest if you do have thick vinyl, but you're worried about it, just use it on this front panel right here, but just keep it out of everything else. But this one turned out so cute, and I love the little wristlet strap. Like I said at the beginning, I'm not, like, the biggest fan of wristlet straps. I'm not someone who thinks, like, oh, we gotta put a strap on it, every time I make something, but I do. I mean, this is really cute. I love this. It just turned out really, really cute. So I hope you love making the Beachcomber pouch as much as I do. I mean, it is so much fun, and again, it's one of those ones where you kind of make one, and you're like, oh yeah, that's really cute. That wasn't so bad. I need to make 12 more. You look at all your material, and you're like, oh, this would look so good like this and this and this. I love the idea of kind of playing around with the fabrics to create new looks. Like if you match this material with the triangles so it kind of all comes down together. I don't know, doing something pieced on the back. You can definitely put someone's name right here. If you have an embroidery machine, you can embroider on this panel first. You can use a Cricut and you can put somebody's heat transfer vinyl name on there. I mean, there's a lot of personalization. Like I said, can you imagine? This would be such like a bridal shower perfect thing, right? Like you give it to all the bridesmaids, right? And then everybody has their names on it and they have all of their cosmetics or whatever they need for the big day. I don't know. It's just so cute. I love it. So here they are together. Oh, this like makes me want to go on an adventure, and this one wants to make me go to like a spa or to Vegas, right? I love these. Is it weird to plan a trip based on my back? I'm sure we all do it. It's fine. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys.